Mr. Pond Boss, tell me what to do to make all my Lunker Lake dreams come true.
Hello everybody, Bob Lusk. Let's go live for about an hour, see if we can have a little fun, talk about ponds and lakes and fish. I was just looking at the radar a while ago, and we got some thunderstorms headed toward us, building up from the west, moving east. Matter of fact, I'm looking at it right now, and here they come. So, fall is here. Drum roll, right? So, what do you do to prepare your ponds for fall? What are some things that are going to happen with ponds in the fall? I had a really fun conversation with Bay Miltenberger a while ago. We're talking fish genetics. I'm a little geeky about that, and he's really interested in that. So we had a really lively, fun discussion. So he said, "Are you going to go live?" I said, "Yeah, I'm going to go live. What do you want me to talk about?" And so Bay said, "Well, you know what? Fall pond prep." I said, "Man, there you go. That's a good topic." Tim Stewart, I don't even know if you have fall in South Florida. Maybe you do. I don't know. I don't know what it would be like. You have this thing, I think in South Florida you have summer, 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 fall, summer, 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 fall. That's your year. You know, in here, we do have distinct seasons, although we have this thing called summer. Summer, summer, summer. Hello, Jeremy Day. Good to see you, buddy. So I thought today I would talk about, after listening to Bay, talk about fall pond prep. What can you do? So I think in order to figure out some things that you need to do and that you should do, you got to know what's going to happen. So let's do a little fall forecast and see what is in store for you. And you know, and for Jeremy Day, you know, that's something you need to look at. And Tim, you know, maybe not as much, because I don't think your water temperature ever gets below about 140 or something. Well, I don't know. You've got, when we've got hot summer, you've got mild summer. You know, so let's talk about some things. So when the temperature begins to drop, and one of the things I harp on all the time is temperature. Hello, Fred Bingaman. Good to see you. Thanks for the reminder. Hashtag Pond Boss Magazine in the comment section. Click like, and share to your timeline. You're eligible for a drawing for something from Pond Boss. I have to get with Leanne here before long and see if we can't crack the nut on that. I haven't talked to her about it in a couple of weeks. So, and she's probably watching because she likes to be the one that types the description and all that stuff. So we'll be talking about that here before long. So when the temperature, so where I was going is the temperature is the number one thing that you've got to pay attention to. And if you're watching the temperature, that's what triggers pretty much everything that happens biologically. It triggers in the springtime of the plankton bloom. It triggers when plants are going to grow. It triggers in the fall when the plants stop. You know, on the topic of plants, if you've come to the conclusion right now that you've got too much aquatic vegetation, you're too late. Should have done something about it back in June when it was becoming a problem. So if you've got vegetation issues now, for example, if Kelly Duffy were watching this right now, he'd chime in and he would say, "Hello, John Dyer, good to see you." Yep, Jeremy Day, never seen the pond before. Yeah, I'll tackle that. You get a chuckle out of that answer. But the temperature triggers everything that happens. It triggers when plants go dormant. It triggers when plants come to life. It triggers when fish spawn. Hello, Chris Chavetta, my good friend from St. Louis. We got two St. Louis buddies here, Fred Bingaman and Chris Chavetta. Chris Chavetta has property out at Innsbruck. So he's a good friend, long-time friend. Got an architecture company there in St. Louis. So temperature triggers spawns. It triggers fish growth. And so we're coming into fall. Your water temperatures are going to begin to fall. Oh, how's that coincide? Fall. Temperatures fall. Spring rise, fall. I don't know, I'm being goofy. So as the temperature begins to drop, you're going to see some things happen. Hello, John Funk. Good to see you. Ron Krisman. I got 2 ponds drained and cleaned out so far and prep for next spring. Attaboy. Well, where you live up near Grand Rapids, Michigan, Ron Krisman, you got to do that because you're deep into fall, I'm sure. I don't know what your temperature is, but I bet you're wearing a jacket. We're not. Well, all right. So what's going to happen is as the water temperature gets down out of the 80s, lower 90s, 80s, gets down into the 70s, that's going to trigger a lot of response. First of all, your plants' photoperiod's getting shorter, so the plants don't have all the sunlight that they need to continue to photosynthesize at the rates that they were even 6 weeks ago. So, dropping the temperatures happens with nature, and then the consequences of that is plants begin to go dormant. If you want to treat them now, odds are higher that it won't work. Now, I'm not telling you don't treat plants, but talk to somebody that knows way more about it than you do before you do that. Hello, Virgil Meyer, Chuck Brinkman, good to see you. Dude, Chuck, getting the fish hook taken out of his hand. Man, if I was there, I would pull that sucker right out. I know how to do that. Jim Norquist finally got a little rain. Good. So, as the temperature drops, I'm going to hit some topics. I'll greet more people here in a minute, answer some of these questions. So, as the water temperature drops, fish feeding goes up dramatically, because what the fish want to do is they want to use the fall to gain as much weight as they can, develop eggs in advance of next year's spawn. Yes, they're developing eggs right now. And the more good, healthy nutrition they have, the better they're going to be able to develop those eggs. The more flesh they can put in their bodies, the more fat they can gain, the better they're going to come out of the winter on the backside and be more healthy. So if your food chain is not in order, figure that out right now. Bump up your feeders. You know, it's in the summertime, I tell people to cut the feed back, but in the fall, bump it up. Bump it up. Get those fish to feed. Now, depending on where you are, Ron Krisman, you're probably going to want to scale your feed back just simply because of geographical range, and you have this thing called winter. You know, you have winter, spring, and a few days of summer, which you had more than that this year, I know. But, you know, be sure that you're feeding effectively and efficiently, even if you got to pay more for a higher quality feed. The higher quality fish foods, like Purina's MVP, their Aquamax Sport Fish lineup, those feeds have got a high level of fish meal, good amount of fat, perfect amount of fat, the right vitamin packages, and the least amount of carbohydrates. Fish don't metabolize carbohydrates. The only reason carbohydrates even need to be in food is make the pellets stick together and make them be able to float. So right now the fish are going to want to eat as much as they can. So check your food chain, and it's if your food fish numbers, bluegill numbers are low, shiner minnows are low. You know, whatever forage fish you've got, if your numbers are low, consider stocking some. Bump up your feeders. Aeration. Yeah. What I tell people about aeration, it's, you know, in the hot areas, you've been aerating, you know, from like 10 o'clock at night till 6 in the morning or 9 to 9 or something like that. When these temperatures get down into the 70s, you can sure bump up your aeration system to run 24/7. And then do that until the water temperature hits 55 degrees. At 55 degrees, fish's metabolism rates have slowed way down, and that'll happen, you know, just before you get into wintertime, depending on your latitude. You know, Nashville, Tennessee, that's going to happen around Thanksgiving. You know, in South Texas, it's going to happen around Christmas. You know, and here where we are in North Texas, probably October, well, it'll still be in the 60s in October. So we're looking at November before our water temperatures get down into that 55-degree range. So run your aeration system, and once the water temperature hits 55 degrees, its affinity for oxygen is going up. Fish metabolism rates are going down. Plant photosynthesis and respiration is slowing down. And you don't have to keep your aeration systems going all the time. Now, if you live in a part of the planet where you do get ice over a long period of time and you want to figure out how you can help keep your pond open some to at least have a source of oxygen, and you've got bottom diffused aeration, move one of your diffusers or two of your diffusers up closer into shallower water. And you do that for a couple of reasons. You don't want to mess with the bottom water. The bottom water needs to stay as warm as it can, and in these cases where there's ice on a pond, the water in the deeper part of the pond is going to be 39 or 40 degrees, 41 degrees. Where at the surface it's going to be freezing. You know, ice is 32 degrees, and it insulates those cold temperatures off those warmer temperatures at the bottom. Warmer temperatures help your fish make it through the winter time. Now, I do understand that some folks want to be able to keep some of the water open, like so a dock can't freeze up, you know, or so you minimize the risk of winter kill. And if you aerate in shallower water, now, each manufacturer that makes aeration system is going to have a different recommendation as to how deep is truly effective for diffused air. Well, find out what that is. I can't tell you how many times, probably 5 or 6 times over my career, I've heard a really sad story about someone who was aerating a pond, had a hole open in the middle, the ice was weak, and somebody drowned. I've heard many cases of deer drowning. So be thoughtful if you want to aerate over the wintertime. And right now is the time to be preparing for that. Right now, the more you can move the water, the faster you're going to expedite its ability to cleanse itself. If you can get it to cleanse itself before you go into the wintertime, you're going to be jump start ahead of everybody else. Fall is a good time to do an electrofishing survey if you do that sort of thing. It's a good time just to get a snapshot of how well did your lake perform. How well did the fish perform? What kind of forage fish do you have going into the wintertime? I can't wait to go look at Bay's Lake. I know he's got 14.3 bazillion, gazillion, however many that is, little threadfin shad that are probably about like that now. So it's going to be fun to see how well the bluegill survived, how well the tilapia have survived. It's just going to be a fun time to go raise the hood in the fall and just see how well your lake performed. Then you can make decisions. That $1,500 you may spend on a survey. Some folks are going to say, well, can I just go spend $1,500 on some bluegill or not green sun, but golden shiners or fathead minnows or something like that? Well, sure you can, but that doesn't necessarily mean the lake needs it. And is that enough? Or a good snapshot from electrofishing is going to paint the picture on that a little bit better. Water chemistry. I think it's a good time to take a look at your water chemistry. If you've got issues with a heavy plankton bloom this time of year, you might want to have that looked at. You can find Bill Cody on the Pond Boss discussion forum. Ask the Boss at pondboss.com. Talk to him about it. That guy's a genius, and he's happy for like $40 to analyze a sample of water to let you know what you've got in it going into the fall. Now, that's in terms of what's microbiology is in it. What kind of algae do you have? Do you have blue-greens? Do you have planktonic algae? What do you have? Now, water chemistry, that's a whole different thing. That's where you check your pH and your alkalinity and some of the different cations and anions and all that kind of technical science stuff that guys like me can help you interpret. Now's a good time to do that. Texas A&M Soil Sciences Lab has got a good lab. So does the Aquatic Diagnostic Lab at Texas A&M. There's good folks there that can help you figure all that stuff out. How are the fish going to behave? Well, all summer long, they have sought the best temperature. Now the best temperature is going to seek them. So you're going to see fish moving shallow. You're going to see bass that have been sitting down near the thermocline at 15 feet or 9 feet or whatever it is in your lake. They're going to want to move up, and now that their operating temperature is getting to be prime, they're going to want to be aggressive. They'll be easier to catch. They're going to fight like crazy, and they're going to feed like crazy. So there's some intel for you about fall pond prep. Study your vegetation. Do water chemistry if you think you need to. Bump up your feeders. Make sure that your food chain is in order. And what that means is there enough? Is the cafeteria open and are all the plates full? And if they are, you're good to go. It's a good time to be culling fish. Cull some of the underperformers. Right now is a great time to begin culling if you haven't been doing that. And do that by measuring lengths and weights and comparing that to standards for that species of fish. And if you need a copy of our spreadsheet, just send me an email at info@pondboss.com. Say, hey, Bob, I'd like to have that spreadsheet. I think the spreadsheet's got largemouth bass, largemouth bass. It's got crappie. It's got bluegill. I think it's got channel cat in it, where you can plug in links and weights and get a good representation of what your fish are like. So there's about 12 or 15 minutes of pretty good meat about what you need to be doing to take care of your ponds. Jeremy Day says, never have seined a pond before. Any tips? Yep, I got tips. It's kind of funny. I still have a 100-foot long, 10-foot deep ace mesh, 3/8 inch mesh seined with a 9-strand mud line on it that I bought in 1984. That's older than you are, dude. And I have patched my fair share of holes in that thing. And anytime I think about using it, I try to remind myself, I promise myself I was never going to pull it again. If I have pulled that seine once, I have pulled it. Oh my gosh, there was probably a span of time when I would pull it by myself 6 or 8 times a week minimum. There were times I'd pull it 5 or 6 times a day. And you learn how to leverage it. So, Jeremy, if you're going to go to Walmart or Academy or somewhere and buy a little minnow seine, buy 2 broom handles, put the tall guy on the deep end, put the short guy on the shallow end, go seine the shallows and see what you've got. Now, that's if you're sampling. Now, Jeremy Day has a hatchery pond. So, Jeremy, I would call somebody like Memphis Net and Twine. Tell them how big your pond is, and you want a seine that's about 30% longer than your pond is wide. Now, if I remember right, your pond is probably 40 or 50 feet wide. So you're going to want like a 60 or 70 foot long seine. It needs to be a little deeper than the water is. You want a mud line on it. The mud line, it looks like some thick, it's kind of like cords, but they're not lightweight, but they're not dense, and the mud line rides on top of the mud. So if you don't have a mud line, your seine is going to very likely sink down into the mud. Then when you pull it the length of the pond, now listen to me, somewhere on the Pond Boss YouTube page, I'm pretty sure we've got a video up there about seining fish. I'm pretty sure we do. I don't know where it is. I don't know how to find it, but I'm pretty sure it's there. If it's not, I'll see if I can find it and put it up there. But when I seine by myself, I use that 100-foot seine on a pond that was like 60 feet wide. I'd pull one side, then I'd walk around, pull the other, and then walk around, pull the other. Go nice and slow and easy if you're harvesting fish. Just go really, really slow. And then when you get ready to crowd the fish up, crowd them up in fairly deep water and give them a chance to separate. What will happen is the big fish will go to the bottom and the smaller fish will rise to the top. And when you're going to seine, and I know what you're going to do, you're going to seine your hatchery pond so you can move fish from your hatchery pond into your big lake. That's what you're going to do. And so you need to be prepared with some tubs, buckets, and fine mesh soft dip nets. So you could probably get those soft mesh dip nets from Memphis Net and Twine. If not, look up Boat Cycle in Henderson, Texas. They can help you with that. So, yes, go slow. Put the tall guy on the deep end. You take the shallow end, although you're pretty tall. You may want the deep end. So there's a couple of real fast-paced tips on seining ponds. And I've been telling you guys off and on about my book that I've been working on. You know, a couple of years ago, my oldest son, Ty, said, "Hey, Dad, you need to write down your stories," which I did. It took me like 6 months. And then son 2, Jonathan, said, "Hey, Dad, would you mind videoing yourself telling those stories?" So why not? So I called Chico. He says, "So we can have them after you're gone." Well, I guess when you get in your 70s, people start thinking about that. I'm not thinking about being gone, but I know they want those stories. So I called Chico. Chico came up. We spent 3 days about this time last year, and we videoed all of them. And Chico says, this would make a pretty good book. Some of these stories would strike people. They're good stories. They're life lessons. They're fun. They're entertaining. And then I kind of rolled my eyes, and then, because all I was going to do is make a book for each one of my kids. That's all I was going to do. Well, here's what happened. I got about 30 of those stories that I cherry-picked, and the way I cherry-picked them, I was a baseball umpire for a long time, 20 years. It was my hobby. Well, I've got some great baseball stories. I've got some wonderful life lesson stories. And then I've got several of the fisheries type stories that I bundled into this first book. I don't even have a title for it yet. It's going to be about bass and baseball, pond management, stuff like that. And I don't have a title. I'd love it if you guys would help me come up with a title, because they're about half baseball stories. I think there's 13 or 14 baseball stories, and the rest are life lessons and fisheries management. One of those stories I tell was when I had to seine a pond when it was 17 degrees outside, and I'd already sang 6 ponds the day before when the weather was okay. That's a pretty entertaining story, and that kind of made me not like seining a whole lot. But you got to do it, you know. You do what you got to do. So, anyway, that book is going to be out probably another 6 or 8 weeks. I think it's going to be about $30, but I will announce that once I find out what the print bill is going to be. And there's going to be a lot of illustrations in it, cartoons. So I'm going to have kind of a special thing. I talked to the cartoonist. He said, man, these are going to be your cartoons. You can do anything you want to. So I said, well, what do you think if I get make 5 prints of each? You sign them, because this guy's famous. He's a famous cartoonist from Dallas. Worked for the Dallas Times-Herald and Dallas Morning News his entire career. Has won oodles and gobs of Katie Awards for his work. And so these cartoons, I've been able to look at a number of them. They're really good. So what I thought I'd do is see if I can't sell a signed print of his cartoons, 5 each of the ones, for $100, and you get a free book with free, and I'll sign it, and free shipping. So that's what I'm thinking. And I don't know how many will take me up on that, but I'm going to throw that out there because I want to try to cover the cost of the cartoons because they're not cheap, and the print bill. Okay, so let's see here. Yep, Chuck Brinkman's probably got that fish hook out by now. You got, look at there, Danny Mac sent some stars. Hey, you know what? I'm learning about the star thing. I got a notice from Meta that if you guys send stars, they send us some pennies, which that's kind of cool. I actually got a check the other day through their whatever they do to my bank account. It was like $38. Gas money. All right, so Tim Stewart says, I've got my next invasive species. Dude, you got all kinds of that. Aquatic ferns. They're a floating plant somewhat smaller than a duckweed. Is it a Zola? Well, a Zola's bigger than that. Okay, Greg McMillan. Hey, Greg is coming to the next Institute of Higher Pondology. He's actually working with Landon Wyatt to figure out what his sediments are like and what his water quality is like. And that's going to be fun. Look at there. Bobby West is mowing at the West Haven Ranch. And Greg is coming to that next Institute of Higher Pondology. You know what? We are at maximum capacity. Activate a star party. Okay, I don't know what that means. Activate a star party. Okay, somebody activated a stars party. So, hey, let's add some stars up, and I'll let you know how that works because I have no idea. I don't know how to play this game that well. Greg, we're looking forward to seeing you, and we're going to use your pond as a case study about water quality and water chemistry. And Bobby is probably in a John Deere tractor in a cab with the air conditioner with rain all around him. I know I saw a storm. And Bobby, this is kind of funny. I got a call today from a guy that was referred by Justin Hansard, the county agent there in Montague County. And this guy called me and he says, hey, I'm working on a dam to build like a 6 or 8 acre lake, and I'd like you to come up today. Oh yeah, I'm going to come up there today. And he said, well, what would it take you to come up here today? I said, man, I'd have to rearrange 2 or 3 things. He said, you know what? What will it take? So I gave him a number, and he says, when can you leave? So I went and got Debbie, said, hey, honey, get ready. We're going to run up south of St. Joe. We went over by Rednecks with Paychecks Ranch over there and looked at a place that a guy's building a lake. Spent 2.5 hours with him today. Got home just in time to do this show. So today's workload got pushed tomorrow because I got money whipped by a guy. Look at there. There's John Henry. Trenton Evans. What temperature do you need to cut the feeders off? Feeding bluegill and hybrid stripers. Chris, I love that question. I'll get to that one next. That's 14 minutes ago. I'm behind, looks like. So here we go. Okay, so there's a stars party going on. I have no idea what that means. Somebody, I don't know how you do it. Activate a stars party. Stars party challenge started. Your audience has been challenged to send stars in the next 5 minutes. Encourage them to reach their goal. Hey, send stars. I'm going to encourage you to send stars. You guys figure that out. We got 2 minutes and 52 seconds to go, and there's 0%. So somebody's not doing it. Wait, nobody's doing it. Send stars. All right. Water temperature, do you cut the feeders off? I cut it off when the fish stop feeding. Now, hybrid stripers and bluegill are going to feed much more actively than some of the other fish like catfish. They're going to feed down into the mid to low 50s. Hybrid stripers will too. One thing I've noticed that if you truly want to grow big bluegill and you're in a good climate where you're not going to be burdened with a whole lot of ice over the winter, you can let your feeder keep going. Just cut the feed way, way back, because there'll be some of the feed hogs with bluegills that will eat even when the water temperature drops down into the 40s, 45 or 46. But you just need to keep it cut back. You know, if you're feeding MVP and you were feeding 5 seconds, cut it back to 2 seconds. And don't, if you got more than one feeder, don't use all of them. Just use 1 or 2 of them. And other than that, the feeding slows way, way, way down. Oh, something happened. We got 19% of whatever the goal is. Whoever did that, that's good. You guys figure that out. Let's do the star thing, and I'll share it with you. I'll let you know what happens. Does horizontal aeration help or hurt the pond temp? It does not do a thing to the pond temp, Chris Chavetta. When you got horizontal aeration, like some of the water circulators, like Casco makes, you know, where the water's moving horizontal or even diagonally, that doesn't affect the temperature at all. It just moves the water and allows the water to become even more saturated with oxygen, for example. So the more that water can be moved, even if it's horizontally, it's not going to affect the temperature, but it sure will affect its ability to absorb more oxygen or release some of the gases. You know, like if there's too much carbon dioxide from respiration at night, or, you know, not very often do you have too much oxygen, but that happens on occasion, especially when it's hot. Then moving the water horizontally helps. It helps the pond. Actually helps it a whole lot. All right, hey guys, we got 45 seconds. Figure out some more star things. Let's do this. Then I'll tell you what happens, because I have no idea. Tim Stewart, are there any fish that consume small strings of filamentous algae suspended in the water column? Tilapia do. The problem with you is where you live. The tilapia can become the problem. But tilapia will eat those small strings of filamentous algae, especially the baby tilapia. It's amazing how quickly things can change and how many different phases there can be for a pond, even in an environment where the temperature swings are not too drastic. That's absolutely true. And that's because, especially when it comes to plankton and algae and aquatic plants, they're dynamic. You know, they're always evolving, changing, coming and going. And the same with the algae. Especially the algae are probably more volatile. All right, star party ended. Well, we'll find out about that. First year I've had algae. Given my new lake, would tilapia be okay next spring? Yes, they would. You're right on the cusp of latitude where I'm skeptical about adding tilapia. However, I do know this, with your lake, we really want the tilapia to die, you know, in the fall. After Thanksgiving typically is when that happens where you are. Now, your odds there in Montgomery County, you know, your risk is that 3 out of 4 winters the tilapia are going to die. So that's a good thing. We want that. But that one winter where they live, you may end up with some 5 and 6 pound tilapia the next year, which that'd be great if they'd buy a spinnerbait, but they don't. Jim Nordquist, speaking of water quality, some of our strip ponds have a heavy nitrogen load possibly caused by invasive bushes around them. Any way of mitigating that nitrogen load? About the best way to mitigate a nitrogen load is to help aerate the pond, give it a chance to go from solution to gas to be blown into the atmosphere. Otherwise, be sure you've got some plants that create, that use nitrogen. And I think the heavy nitrogen load is probably not caused by invasive bushes, because those bushes are taking up nitrogen rather than releasing nitrogen. Now, if they're shedding their leaves, you know, if they're deciduous, then that could be part of the case. If that's the case, aeration helps. And when you aerate, especially in the spring and summertime, you're making more nitrogen available to be consumed by aquatic plant life, plankton blooms, algae blooms, and then when you get a rain, some of that stuff flushes out. So that's my answer for that right now. Let's see here. R.E. Thompson just got back from 2,000-mile North Georgia trip with 51 degrees. I bet you did love that. That's great. Virgil Meyer, hi Bob. Can you relate the decreasing water temperatures to what you have just described as the pond cools down? Can you relate the decreasing water temperatures to what you have just described? Can I relate? Oh, okay. So I think that question is saying what happens at what temperatures? So when the water temperature drops below 80, then you start to see fish activity increase. They move more throughout that open water column above the thermocline. Somewhere around 75 to 70 degrees, the pond turns over. That's when the thermocline disappears. The bottom layer begins to slowly mix with the upper layer if the temperature drop is gradual. And then you'll begin to see the water column becoming autonomous top to bottom. Now, when a pond turns over, classic signs are you can smell it. It smells musty. You can see the water change color, and most of that's temporary. And the fish may not feed for a couple of days, depending on what volume of water you've got sitting below the thermocline, because that water below the thermocline has been there probably since May. And it's used up all of its oxygen. It's collected some gases, from the decomposition organically down there, which is what used up all the oxygen. And then when that water mixes throughout the water column, those gases become saturated to the point where they release into the atmosphere, and you can smell it. And it can smell like anywhere between mild rotten eggs to kind of a musty, mildewy smell. Hello, Joel Danauer. Good to see you from Louisiana. Virgil Meyer saying current water temperatures, let me scroll down here, 75 at 1 foot and 73 at 3 feet. You're getting real close to your pond turning over. Yep, you're getting close to it turning over. Calling strikes and throwing nets. Calling strikes and throwing bass. Calling strikes and catching bass. Yeah, that's a good idea. I like that. Sorry I didn't catch it. Did you say bow cycle? Boat, B-O-A-T-C-Y-C-L-E, manufacturing company. Boat cycle, as in row, row, row your boat, ride, ride, ride your cycle. Boat cycle. They're in Henderson, Texas. They've got a catalog online. You can check them out. Eddie Max at 99. All right, Fred. Fred wants the $100 bill. And you know what, Fred? When I get to that point, I'll show you all the different cartoons. And they're all vertical because the book's going to be vertical. And I'll show you that. Look at there. It looks like Wyatt sent some stars. Way to go, guys. Clayton Smith, I think otters wiped out 80 to 90% of our fish. Pond size is approximately half an acre. That can sure happen in half an acre. Should we refill with bluegill now, or when should we refill the pond? First of all, verify what you have. And since we're going into the fall, I'd be hesitant to put any more fish in there in the fall, simply because otters operate mostly in the wintertime. So I think the next job is to, and Clayton, I don't know where you are, but I would verify what you've got left, because otters tend to go after the bigger fish in the wintertime. That's their nature. I'm not saying that's what happened to you, but that's the nature of that beast. Yep, with your half-acre pond, you can borrow Jeremy Day's net, his saying he's not bought yet, and go sample it. But I would fish it. I would use just small spinner baits, little crank baits, small soft plastics. I'd put night crawlers under a bobber on a brim hook. Go see what you can catch and see what's left. The odds of otters eliminating all the fish, that's not likely. Sound like I just heard some more. I think that's a star sound there. You guys probably heard that. Yeah, Jeremy sent stars. Won't bass get big enough to take care of tilapia? Yeah, but tilapia sometimes don't want to live in the same spot where a bass does. So if the winter doesn't kill them, well, here's what will happen. If the winter doesn't kill them, it will slow them down enough that the bass can gorge a big percentage of them. But see, when you stock those tilapia, they're going to be pretty big. They're going to be 6 to 8 inches long, and they're going to go really, really, really fast. So going into the fall, you'll have a few that are like 1.5 pounds to 2 pounds. Not likely that a bass is going to be able to choke down 1.5 pound or 2 pound tilapia. They're just too tall. They're a 2 pound tilapia is going to be this tall and about that thick. So they're not as easy to eat. Let's do some commercials right quick. Water. I got busted with my bourbon tonight. which is okay. So, TexasHunterProducts.com. Check those guys out. I usually talk about their fish feeders, and I talk some about their habitat things. So spend a little time on that website, but they also have outstanding road feeders. And, we did a show live from there back in, whenever I was in San Antonio. I think that was in August. So you can scroll back on this Facebook page after the show and find the show that I did with Cody Borgfield, who is going to be at the Institute of Higher Pondology, by the way. Oh, speaking of Institute of Higher Pondology, we do have room for 2 or 3 more people. Bobby told me we've got enough seats to seat 25 or 28 people, and right now we got about 25 of those seats full. So that's sponsors as well as attendees, and we've got an outstanding agenda. And if you want to see the agenda to help you make up your mind, send me an email. I've got that agenda pretty well refined and finished. Just the curriculum of what we're going to be doing, and I can send that to you and let you take a look at it. If you're interested, tell me. And it'll be going out for everybody like Greg and everybody else that's already signed up. I will be sending that out to everybody next week, probably early in the week. All right, so let's see here. Oh, birddogit.com. Check them out. That's my son Jonathan. He's got some really interesting land services that he's developing. He's carved himself a niche. Now he's trying to figure out how to fit into that niche. And he's in year 4. So, I think by about year 6 or 7, he's going to have that niche pretty well figured out. And his number one objective is to help steward folks about wildlife, hunting, taxes. He's got a background. He grew up in the pond management business with me. But when he went to school, he ended up studying about business and finance, he worked for Goldman Sachs for a few years, for Heidi Cruz, Ted Cruz's wife, and then he went to work for a boutique wealth management company, and then he started his own wealth management company. And then he got really into, equity financing and the way that businesses work and how money works. And he's seen where a lot of landowners leave some things on the table, especially absentee landowners that don't know how to play the game. Farmers and ranchers that have been in it for a while, they know some of this stuff. But if you've got land and you want to get some advice that's out of the box a little bit, go to birddogit.com and ask to have a conversation with Jonathan and some of his great employees. He's building a pretty good business there. Purina Mills, Aquamax Fish Food, still my favorite because I know what's in them. I've been to the research facility over and over and over. I've had countless conversations over the last 30 years now, helping them develop fish foods and help them develop the market for those fish foods. And so I'm a big believer in Purina Mills Aquamax sport fish foods, especially game fish chow's pretty good, but it's grain based, so be picky about which feed you choose. Easy Docks of Texas, David Schneiderman. He's a sponsor, and actually David's going to be at the Institute of Higher Pondology. So going to be looking forward to that. So anyway, Pond Boss Magazine, good gosh, I can't go without saying that. It comes to you in this plastic bag, hermetically sealed, like Johnny Carson used to say. $35 a year. Say it with me. $35 a year. Cheaper than a Friday night date, and it lasts a year. And I promise you there's all kinds of good nuggets in this magazine. This is the July-August. Talked about the genetic study that we did out at Bay Miltonberger's ranch with Red Hills Fishery. And it's pretty interesting stuff. We've got always, each issue's got some really meaty, good pond and lake management, wildlife management, pond construction articles, all kinds of good stuff. Okay, Jason Dodd, rephrasing a question from last week. Will my 3-pound largemouth bass get more nutritional value from a 5-inch bluegill or an 8-inch golden shiner? Probably that 8-inch golden shiner because it's heavier. If you weigh an 8-inch golden shiner, it's got more meat than a 5-inch bluegill does, and it's easier to swallow. So, and the other thing about that is golden shiners, even though they're predatory fish, they're kind of opportunistic. They're, with such a tiny mouth, really all they can catch are really small insects or fish eggs or newly hatched fry, which they'll do that. Where the bluegill, they don't have the same amount of fat that a golden shiner does. So it's a little bit different nutrition. Golden shiner, an 8-inch golden shiner compared to a 5-inch bluegill. There's more weight, more mass, more fat, great protein. It's a better fish in that for that specific question. Bill Schrum. Bill, I'll be ringing your number before long because we're going to figure out some more things about the upcoming Institute of Higher Pondology. So I scrolled past it. Here it is. Hey, Bob, I've been fishing with a 2-year-old. 7:30 is a prime time to feed and fish. Yes, it is. That's a great time. 7:30 in the evening. You're welcome, Jim. Hey, there's some more stars. I can't wait to dig into that. R.E. Thompson, hashtag Pond Magazine. You got it. Mark Hicks, what was Sarah part of the results today from the electrofishing survey? Have not heard that yet, but I know it was happening. And I'll call Sean McNulty and find out. Hell, you know what? Let's see if we can get him on the phone. Stand by a minute. You guys ask a question. Let's see if we can get an answer. Bear with me here while I'm looking up his phone number. Sean McNulty. Bear with me. McNulty. There it is, Sean. All right, I'm going to put him on speaker so we can get on the phone. Probably going to go to voicemail. Don't forget your Pondology course online too. Yep, we got a Pondology course online at pondboss.teachable.com. So, yep, I know Sean was going to do that survey. Mark. We're going to leave him a message saying you're telling you guys are asking about this.
Well, you've reached Sean McNulty with American Sportfish. I'm sorry I couldn't get to your call. If you would, leave me a message and I'll call you back as soon as I can. Thank you.
Hey, Sean Lusk here, doing my Facebook Live right now, and you're on it. You don't even know it because it's remote, and your voicemail's up. So we just got a question. What was Sarah Parvin's results from electroshocking her pond today? So if you get a minute, it's 8:12. I'm going to be live until, I don't know, 8:25, 8:30. If you get a minute, ring me back and let's talk about it because an adoring audience of yours wants to know. Thanks, buddy. Bye. All right, so we'll see. I better turn the ringer on so if it rings, I can see it, hear it, know it. Okay, Jeremy Day, for a grow-out pond, when I take out, I'm leaving the babies and big ones. For a grow-out pond, when I take out, I'm leaving the babies and big ones. What inches should I be looking for to put in the big pond? Looking for a range that will be a year old in October. Okay, here's what I'm going to tell you. Leave the tiniest fish. And I would get a 3/8 inch mesh because that way your newly hatched bluegill can swim through that. So I'd be taking out 2 inches to 4 inches long. And in that pond, I think you need to leave 25 to 40 of your biggest adults to be able to reproduce. So I would take out from 1.5 inches to 3.5 or 4 inches long. And here's the cool thing about that. When you take those 4-inch long fish, oh, here comes Sean. Hang on here, let's see what he says. Hey Sean, what's going on, buddy?
Hey Bob, how are you?
Good. Did you listen to my message?
You want to ask about Sarah's Lake, right?
Yep. So I'm live right now, and we just got a question that somebody's asking. Said you shocked her lake today. What did you find?
That it was as bad as we thought it was, and you know, I'll let Sarah go into a lot of the details, but it looks like we're going to have to do a full reset, and which is exciting. I mean, everybody hates to see all those big bluegill go, but now we have the opportunity not to have crappie, not to have, you know, big sex bass in there. So while it is extremely disappointing, it's kind of exciting to get to do this with, you know, her goal in mind.
Yep.
And start over again.
Excellent. Well, I know that's it's probably not what she wanted to hear, but that's really what she needs to hear. So rock and roll, man. You guys do it, and I'll be catching up with you here in another day or so. So thanks for checking back so quick. That answered that question.
All
right, buddy. Thank you. Thanks, buddy. See you. Bye. All right, there you are, straight from the horse's mouth. Tell me we can't make things happen right here on the Pond Boss Live Facebook show. All right, so the results were that they shocked up crappie, they shocked up some bluegill, they shocked up some bass, but it was pretty much a 97 to 98% fish kill is what I'm hearing through his tone, which means that they're going to go in and eradicate the rest of the fish, and start over from scratch, which is the smartest thing they could possibly do. And I think, of course, it's Sarah's lake, so we'll wait to hear from Sarah and her dad, Dennis. They'll tell us what they're going to do. And of course, I'm an optimist, but I'm also a realist. When our house burned down back in 2005, I really thought the fire department would get there, they'd put the fire out, we'd be sleeping there. What I should have been thinking was, this house is going to burn down, and while I have a few minutes to go get all of Debbie's pictures and the keys to the car to get it out of the driveway, I probably should have done that. And of course, the firefighters out here are going to tell me why it's going to say, no, don't go into a burning house. Well, in this case, it was smoldering in the attic, well, not in the attic, but in the ceiling, and it didn't really just burst into flames probably for 30 minutes. I mean, that were the circumstances. So don't ever go into a burning house. But anyway, why did I tell you that? All right, so extra plug. Okay, so Bill Shrum, extra plug for Purina Mills Aquamax MVP. I stocked 1 to 2 inch channel catfish on 9/10/22. Caught one that weighed 8.18 pounds last night. Stomach was full of nothing but MVP. I was using an ultralight with a 1/32 jig head and a live grasshopper. Greedy little catfish. I've caught more catfish on grasshoppers than almost anything else other than fish food. All right, guys, so here we are, 8:16. Let me go back and make sure I've hit all the questions. Yeah, Jeremy said, hey, don't forget about your pondology course online. I do have Institute of Our Pondology online at pondboss.teachable.com. I think there's a link to it on the Pond Boss website. If you go to pondboss.com, there's a menu across the top, and I think it's maybe under resources. Not sure, I don't remember. But we do have that pondology course online, and there's 22 videos there, some of which you're not going to get at the hands-on Institute of Our Pondology. But in the Institute of Our Pondology we do in person, you're going to get hands-on stuff. You're going to be in an electrofishing boat. You're going to be weighing and measuring fish. Your fingers are going to smell like bass and probably get a few holes poked in them. You're going to learn about aquatic plants. You're going to get to meet a network of people. You're going to get to meet a John Dyer. John Dyer is going to be there. He's going to be in charge of data collection. And so one of the things that fascinates me about this Institute of Our Pondology, when you attend it, it's even when we go back to the very first one, which Danny Mack went to that one. Danny McWhirter's coming to the next one. He's the one that started the STARS thing today. So when Danny Mack was there, I'm confident that he still got contacts from people he met then. And that was probably, 4 or 5 years ago when we did the first hands-on one. So there's a lot of, and we're always looking for new information. Where do you get it? Well, go to pondboss.com, a lot of free articles. Go to the YouTube page, Pond Boss YouTube page. We're adding more videos every day. Like last week, John Dyer took this video from the Facebook Live, and he edited out all the fluff, and he brought in all the meat and turned it into an hour-long video. Ended up being like 14 minutes. 14 minutes worth of meat. So, and that's been posted on YouTube. And I don't know if Leanne's linked it to this Facebook page yet or not, but I'll check with her tomorrow and make sure it gets linked here. But there's good resources. And of course, Pond Boss Magazine. I mean, this is what fuels the economy of Pond Boss. This magazine. The advertisers in it, I promise you, these advertisers, I've vetted them. I know these people. A lot of the advertisers in here, I've got a personal relationship with. I trust them. I trust them with my business. I trust them with yours. And that's a big part of the reason why we keep printing Pond Boss is when we get these advertisers out there. And at $35, if we had to depend on subscriptions to fuel the nut, pay the nut, it'd be a hard ride to do that. But with the advertisers kicking in their share, we're able to keep going. And of course, Pond Boss is growing at the rate of a runaway glacier, so we would love to have some gift subscriptions for you guys. And I'll think about it with Leanne and see if we can't come up with some kind of a deal for you. If you subscribe or buy a gift subscription, we can discount yours or something like that. Bay Milton Burger, look at the back of the bag. That will give you a good chuckle. Yeah, hey, Bill Shrum, you got that Do you have that MVP bag? If you do, take a picture of it and put it up here. And Bay's right. He'll give you a big chuckle because guess whose picture's on it? Mine. I didn't do that. So, I don't know, this had to be, good gosh, 15 years ago. 15 years ago. It had to be maybe longer ago than that. It might have been 2007, 8, 9, through there somewhere. The big dogs at Purina came to my house in Gordonville back then, and the mission was, I had written instructions on how to feed fish that they wanted to put on the back of the bag. So they wanted to finalize the bag design, and they had gone to their plant, their mill in Fort Worth, and on the way back, they came up to my place and stayed overnight with us, and we fed them, caught fish, had a great time. Then we sat down at my kitchen table. I think there were 4 or 5 of us around the table, four Purina guys and me, and Debbie had made a good lunch, and she had served the lunch. And we were talking about the wording, and because we had to economize the words to be able to fit the space on the back of these bags to tell people how to feed the fish. So I had my laptop out, and I was typing it up, and we were editing and rewriting and changing all those words, and finally got it like they liked it and like I liked it as well. And Debbie walked over and poured some tea in somebody's cup. She says, his picture needs to be on that bag. And David Nelson, who had become a pretty good friend by then with Purina, he says, well, Miss Palmas, I don't know if we can do that. She said, you're not listening to me. His picture needs to be on that bag, and he needs to be holding some fish that grew up on this fish food. And they all looked at each other, and they were going to tell her no. And that Bay Miltonberger is how my picture got on the back of fish food. Bay's picture's on a milk carton somewhere, or at the post office, and mine's on a fish food bag. There's your chuckle. All right, Jeremy Day said you should take out 1 inch to 4 inches and leave 25 to 45. Then you said something cool was going to happen when you got the phone call. What was the cool thing? Oh, yeah, exactly. Let me think back on that. So here's what I'm telling you. Take out the bluegill that are 1.5 inches up to 4 inches. Oh, I got the cool thing. Those 4-inch bass are probably the same age as those 2.5 and 3-inch bass, which means those are the jumpers. Those are the ones that have the greatest potential to get big in your lake. So what you do there with a hatchery pond, and you take out those 4-inch bluegills that are not even a year old hardly, and put them in your lake, those are going to be the fish with the best growth potential to hit 2 pounds. So you're not depending on your lake to recruit enough young bluegills to hit that 2-pound mark. And that's part of what we did at Richmond Mill Lake in North Carolina back in the mid-2000s, to where we were able to grow bluegill even over 3 pounds. So we grew lots and lots of bluegills, 2 pounds, 4 ounces, 2.5 pounds, and Bruce Condello caught a 3-pound, 4-ounce bluegill, and one of the fishing guys caught a 3-pound, 4-ounce bluegill. We shocked up a handful of them that were knocking on the door of 3 pounds. And we did that by 2 ways. We did that, one, by they had 2 small 1/4-acre hatchery ponds. Every fall and every spring we'd harvest fish. And we'd move them into the big lake and go spread them around where the habitat was the best. And the second thing is, that lake had 50 feeders on it. It was a 125-acre lake. And we let all the feeders run out of feed except 10 of the ones where we knew the bluegill were there most often. And we just cut the feed time back. And I'm real confident when I tell you that some of those feed hog bluegills, even when the water temperature got down into the 40s, they were eating that feed and gaining weight over the winter. So instead of metabolizing their fat and losing a little bit of weight over the winter, they were gaining weight over the winter, and that gave them an advantage to get to those bigger sizes. So that's the way I see that. So guys, let's see here. I think we're just about out of questions here. So where I'm going with that, Jeremy, is by using your hatchery pond, and you'll be able to take out anywhere from 4,000 to 8,000 bluegill every time you harvest in the fall. And you're going to be able to add those to your 9-acre lake. And if you do the math on that, you're adding another 1,000 bluegill or so, 500 to 1,000 bluegill per acre per year. And that's going to help bolster your food chain in the fall going into the wintertime. Now, the reason that we harvested fish in the springtime is we fed them at Richmond Milling, and in other places I've done that, where those little bitty babies that swim through the mesh right now, they're going to be big enough that you can capture them next spring and put them in the lake. You know, so I think harvesting bluegill twice a year is a wise idea, especially at your latitude down in Montgomery County. So, guys, I think we're about to get to a stopping point here, so I think I'm going to wrap up. We still have a few slots for the Institute of Higher Pondology. Spread the word. We're going to go electrofish Jimmy Houston's lakes. We're going to do some data analysis. We're going to, you guys that go work on this, you guys are going to work with John Dyer and I, and we might even use a little AI to help word the phrases and things to create a report for Jimmy Houston's lakes, and we're going to submit those reports to him while we're at the Institute of Higher Pondology. So, guys, I'm going to wrap it up for now, and I always appreciate you watching this show. I appreciate your questions. It just helps keep me going, and it gives me a great impression as to what you guys are thinking. RE, how many you put in a 2.5 acre pond? A 2.5 acre pond, I like to put in 25 to 40 fish in like an acre, even a half acre. So in a 2 acre pond, 75 or 80. And it can be skewed a little bit more toward females. So if you put in 75, put in 50 females and 25 males. And then you're going to have more bluegill than you can handle. So, all right, guys, I'm going to wrap it up right here, call it a day, and look forward to seeing you guys. I don't know where I'll be next Tuesday, but I got a feeling I'll be hanging out with you. So until next Tuesday, adios for now.